Welcome back to ΣիվիլNet. I'm excited to be joined today by a friend of the show, Sir Leonid Nersisyan, Senior Research Fellow at APRI. Leonid, thanks for hopping on.
Hello, thank you for inviting.
Let's dive in, since this is your area of expertise, let's dive into the Armenian army reforms. I wanted to check in with you, touch base, it's a new year. What's your assessment on the pace of the reforms, the depth of the reforms?
It was great to hear some good narratives which were announced at the Army Day on 28 January, a few days ago, by Prime Minister and Minister of Defense especially. And many of those things were in pipeline, but were not publicly announced. For example, they gave numbers on defense procurement, which were several $1 billion worth of contracts for procurement abroad and hundreds of millions of contracts for domestic industry, which is fantastic to hear. And I think that part with the external procurement was more known because of the Indian media leaks, and I think that one of the foreign analysts was estimating the India contracts around up to $2 billion. So if we plus to that some other procurement, we can technically say that we even from open source knew that it's not 1 billion, but I mean more than 2 million. 2 billion is already close to the term of several billions procurement. What is even more important is the domestic industry procurement. I think that's a very new approach shown by Armenian government, and I think that finally we can see what our industry can really produce and what it can really do, because one thing is developing a prototype of something, and the other thing is producing hundreds of real combat-ready pieces of equipment. And what is also very worthy here, that the companies which are real, let's say, they will be able to complete this, or mostly able to complete this, and we will filter as a result the companies which are going to be the main ones in Armenia in defense industry. So the ones which are not only talking but also can do stuff. But coming to the defense reform agenda, which procurement is not. Procurement is never defense reform. It's very important to understand that are different things. In Armenia, sometimes people misunderstand this. From the defense reform agenda, I think very important was the emphasis on changing the way how the conscription is organized. I mean, this military commissariats think that they are very ineffective, and that there is a vision that we need to digitalize it, and we need to have high technologies there. And I very much support that idea, and talked about it before this announcement several times, that it's much better to have an electronic database which is connected to all the digital state institutions databases, which is also a process which is conducted in Armenia now. So you will know the most recent phone number of person when he buys a new SIM card, that will automatically can be updated in the database. He changed his job, it automatically goes into the database. So you know where people are, you know what they do. You know, for example, that, I don't know, Mr. Armen is working in defense industry, and it's a red flag, and this system won't put him on the list for mobilization, for example, during the war, like it happened many times in 2020. This lists will be much more objective, updated, and the computer is not doing the same mistakes as underqualified and underpaid
Pencil
personnel
pushers
are doing at this military commissariat. It can't do, a computer can't do corruption and all these kind of things. I would even go probably further, trying to do the medical commissions at some private medical entities for good state money, so we can rule out the corruption from there too, not via the state system, which is in every country less effective than the private one. So we won't need the military commissariats. Technically, we won't need the high-ranked officers heading them. And you will just need electronically to send electronically the letters for conscription or mobilization, and you will have people who you will have probably police who will be just looking after this system working, like if people are coming or not. So that's will simplify very much everything. That's the first one. That's, I think, is very important, as the reservists and mobilization system was the most screwed up in 2020, probably among everything else. That was the biggest catastrophe. And it was important to hear the part about modernizing, reforming the reservist system and the territorial, creating the territorial defense troops. Unfortunately, both processes are, I think, going slower than they should. I think we came to the point in Armenia when problems are understood by most of state institutions, but there is lack of this momentum how to change, really change the things. That's both probably problems with wheels sometimes and problems with the professionals. It's not an easy thing to do. I mean, this kind of profound defense reforms, and especially it's not easy when you are in a war situation and you have an acting large armed forces, which you should change the way that in the transitional period they don't lose the operational capacity. So you can't just, of course it would be just much easier to do in a country like, I don't know, Italy, for example, where you don't have real war threats and you can just work on your troops for 2, 3, 4 years and don't think, do everything you want with them, try different types of training, orders of battle, and don't be under risk. So this is the situation with the ongoing reforms. I think that there should be, the most emphasis should be on command and control issues, of course, and the structural issues. I think there should be more discussion about that. I haven't noticed that they discussed it too much on the Army Day, of course, there should be more activities in that direction. It pretty well works with defense industry, also development, and I think that the C2 issues can be partly solved by also some products developed by Armenian industry, by several companies. So it's both structural reform, and you need new equipment for conducting new type of C2 operations. So you will need some new software packages, new communication systems, and I think that that's the part where Armenia is stronger than in most of other domains, because we have this huge IT sector. We don't even need to rely on external partners with that too much, and it is good because this is the most critical infrastructure, which is not good to be reliant on anybody, let's say. It's not important, is it West, Russia, or India, or anybody else, because one day you have good relations with one country, and the next day, unfortunately, it can change because of some reasons which are not even connected to Armenia.
It's a good segue, actually, to discuss the growing partnership between the public and the private sector when it comes to defense-related issues. What's your take, and do you find that it's actually satisfactory up to this point, the cooperation between the Ministry of Defense and the local burgeoning private defense companies that we have in Armenia?
I think that in terms of MOD defense industry partnership, it's much better now because, as it was announced, there is a big package of contracts, which is true, but I think that there could be done more on the development of new products, understanding what exactly we can and we need to do in Armenia. And this is a hard issue because you need professionals which can form these technical images of equipment Army needs. So it should not be when only the way when defense industry thinks and says, okay, I can produce this kind of drone or this kind of something, and then go and propose it to Ministry of Defense. That's let's say in developed countries with developed defense industries, that's an auxiliary way of doing things, not the main one. Main one is when defense ministry is saying that we need a, I don't know, 5th generation fighter like it was in US, and we need this kind of criteria for that. It should be, I don't know, it should be cruising on supersonic without turning on afterburners on the engines. I don't know, it's not important what kind of example it is. That was just the most famous one, probably. But there should be good quality tenders between companies when these images are already created and proposed, many stages, trials. For example, first you can do a tender for, I don't know, some kind of artillery munition, for example, and then you will have 5 companies applying with early stage prototypes, or even not even prototypes, but some laboratory level blueprints or something. It's important to note that in developed countries, the defense procurement works a bit different than in Armenia. It's not the companies which are proposing something to Ministry of Defense. That happens sometimes, but that's an auxiliary approach. In most of cases, it's Ministry of Defense and Armed Forces who form the technical images of the equipment they want, like the example of the 5th generation fighter in US. It came from Ministry of Defense, what kind of criteria they need, like the stealth capacities, like the supersonic cruising speed and everything else. And then several companies applied, and it was a multi-staged process when first companies just present the very early blueprints and concepts. Then some of them are chosen. These companies get money to go one stage further. Then some of them are also chosen, and then they come to the end when they have normally 2 companies which present high-level prototypes, and the one is chosen. So we need to organize something similar to that in Armenia, that kind of processes. It's not easy because you can't only have army officers, for example, being involved in that. There should be people with very profound technical understanding in armed forces for that. This should be people with engineering skills, scientific skills. There should be high-paid people. Sometimes, I think in case of Armenia, at least on the early stages, this can be solved also with bringing some foreign specialists. So, of course, you can say that it's I don't know, confidential things, but you need to start with something. At least try with Armenian origin people from abroad, and it will work, I think, much better than now when it's just ideas from the industry itself, like 90% or 80% of cases. It's not a right type of using your resources, I think. If we switch to the other private government interactions in defense sector, I think we will come to the problem of this so-called military patriotic organizations like VOMA, Metz and Tigran, POGA, and many others. I think there is much more to do there because there is no real legislation about that. It's important to have the format of how these organizations are licensed, how they work with MOD. Maybe they should have some standards, unified standards of trainings for different specializations. So this kind of certificates, for example, given to people who attended some kind of courses can be used later to update this conscription reservists databases of Ministry of Defense. So when they call up somebody, either a conscript or reservist, they will know that this person, I don't know, is a drone operator. He already knows basics of using some kind of multi-copter, for example, and he's not going to be used as just a rifleman or so. That kind of things are very important because if it's not written on the paper and it's not a law, it never works in strict organizations like armies, which are conservative. It should be written and it should be, I don't know, a real law that you should do it this way.
Finally, Leonid, let's take a look over the border here. Are you following the changes going on in the Azeri military? I mean, even since the beginning of this year, they had the Turkish defense minister over. They signed, again, some commitment to continue building a Turkish model army. Aliyev appointed the head of their Turkish-trained special forces as the, if I'm not mistaken, their deputy defense minister, which means he's effectively the commander of their entire army. They've announced and confirmed today that they're purchasing $300 million worth of Serbian howitzers. So what's your assessment on the changes going on over there? Is it a lot of cosmetic changes, or should we start to be seriously concerned, especially with this appointment as this Turkish-trained officer to head their entire army?
That's with Turkish part, if we begin with that. I don't think that it changes things that much because this kind of process started in 2020 and already in 2020 when we had the war. De facto, the head of commander of general staff of Azeri armed forces was a Turkish general. And after the 2020, it was a fact for until now. So that's not, that's some kind of official approach now to that fact, but on the ground things I think are not going to change that much. So we just see that this kind of cooperation is going to continue and probably is going to continue for a long period of time, as it's now official. And I think that was one of the keys of Azeri victory in 2020 because Azeri officers, high-ranked officers, I think are less capable, of course, than the ones which came from Turkey. That's a big armed forces. They've chosen the best. And they have experience of different conflicts in the Middle East, and that gave this change, the difference, let's say, in capacities between our armed forces. So, of course, we should consider that. That gives us even more hard task because now we need to comply to the level of Turkish military thought, let's say, not Azeri military thought. And equipment-wise, I think Turkey is an important partner for Azerbaijan, but it's not the biggest one. It's still Israel, the biggest one. Turkey did some interesting projects recently with Azerbaijan. The most interesting one, I think, is modernizing of the Su-25 Soviet attack aircraft fleet. Now it can use Turkish guided munitions of different types, and that's going to be, if we don't do anything with that, that can be the new Bayraktar next time, let's say, in terms of effect on our forces. So they probably now are capable of using long-range cruise missiles, some too, the ones which Turkey produced. So we need to put more emphasis on developing of air defense, not the way it can counter only drones, but also massive use of different guided munitions, which is a very challenging task. But a real one, because we see that in Russo-Ukrainian warfare, both sides were able to adapt to this approach. It took time, but now we can see how others are doing that, and we don't need this time to adapt. We just need to work on the system.
Okay. Well, I sincerely hope that somebody from MOD is watching this video, and I sincerely hope someone from MOD is sitting and every single day analyzing the Russo-Ukrainian war. To finish, there's an interesting interview with the general in charge of Dnipro in Ukraine, where he was talking about the urgency to adapt Ukraine's military even after all this time. And he said that if we're a small Soviet model army fighting a large Soviet model army, we're going to lose. If we become a small Western Standard army fighting a large Soviet army, we can potentially win. So I hope that we have this in mind and we're doing everything that we can. Leonid from APRI, yeah, thank you so much for hopping on.
Thank you very much. Shouldn't I comment the last thing you told?
Please do, yeah. Let me know your thoughts.
Yeah, because I mean, I only partly agree with that statement, because numbers still are important, unfortunately, and that's what West understood now. It's, of course, this model is more effective, but if you have 2 times or 3 times less troops, it doesn't mean that it's going to work, especially if your adversary can fire, for example, 5 times more artillery barrages than you. I don't know. It's a bit controversial thing to say, and I think that this approach that having high technological advantage is the only important thing is a bit changed now in Western military thought, and now everybody thinks about producing millions of traditional artillery munitions and artillery guns and everything. So I think that the right balance is better approach here. And by the way, I think the numbers are one of the biggest problems for Armenia now, which should be solved by boosting the number of professional contractors in armed forces. Not closing the conscription, because you just physically can't do that at this point, but boosting the number of professionals. So you can have, I don't know, 70,000 strong armed forces. This is the number you should be thinking about to be able to defend your country. And why not do counteroffensives after your enemy is became weaker in his own offensives? So that's the way, I think, not the small Western army. That's a big Western army is the right way.
Well, I agree with that. Thanks again, Leonid. It's good to have you on.
Thank you.
Thanks again for watching ＳiviLNet. This is Pat, and we'll speak with you very soon.